Iroh is the most powerful firebender in the world who has chosen not to be dangerous. That choice is the gap everything on this list lives inside. Here is everyone who could actually end the Dragon of the West. Let's break this down. Tai Lee. She is not a bender. She does not need to be. Chai blocking targets the body's pressure points to disrupt the flow of chi through its natural pathways, and disrupted chi means disrupted bending, completely, immediately, without any firebending output as a counter available because the physical mechanism firebending operates through has been switched off. Tai Lee demonstrated this against Azula, who was mid-strike when Tai Lee's fingers found the right points and paralyzed her in place. She demonstrated it against Katara, against multiple Kyoshi warriors simultaneously, against Sokka repeatedly. She can work at speed that benders cannot process before contact is made. The critical variable against Iroh specifically is range. Iroh's firebending at any functional level keeps Tai Lee outside the engagement window where chi blocking becomes possible. The pathway to a kill runs through either deception or a scenario where Iroh does not expect an attack, the same conditions that allowed Azula's blue fire blast to wound him in 2 Zin. Iroh was caught off guard in that engagement. He is not immune to being caught off guard. His willingness to appear harmless, the performance of a rambling old man that he maintained across 2 seasons, is exactly the psychology that creates the window Tai Lee would need. Someone who presents as no threat until they are close enough to touch is the one category of opponent the Dragon of the West's firebending cannot address at range. Hama. The full moon is the condition, and within that condition, she demonstrated simultaneous control of multiple targets without visible strain. Bloodbending overrides the body's own commands by manipulating the fluid moving through it. The firebender's Adwi flows through biological channels that are also blood channels, and disrupting those channels disrupts the firebending mechanism from inside the body rather than from outside it. Iroh's firebending knowledge is the deepest in the series. His chi control, derived from the Sun Warrior's teachings and decades of refined practice, is operating at the highest level any human firebender achieved in the era. None of that knowledge, none of that control, and none of that refinement provides a meaningful defense against the physical processes of his own circulatory system being redirected against him. He cannot firebend at a threat that is operating inside his veins. He cannot redirect lightning at a force that is expressed through his own musculature. In the Crystal Catacombs, Iroh fought the Tai Lee and multiple opponents including Azula simultaneously and held his own. Hama bloodbending him does not produce a fight. It produces an ending. The limitation is the full moon requirement, which creates a known window rather than a permanent threat. But the series documented that Hama operated across multiple targets in that window without showing the effort that should have accompanied it. Iroh, inside that window, with no awareness it was coming, does not have an answer. Combustion Man. The technique fires through targets rather than at them. Combustion bending produces superheated explosive blasts from the third eye tattoo that disintegrate on contact with matter rather than transferring force conventionally. Iroh can redirect lightning because lightning moves through the body along traceable chi pathways. The redirection works by creating a passage for the energy to follow from fingertip through stomach to fingertip. The physics of that redirect require the incoming energy to be something that interacts with the body's chi structure. A combustion blast does not. It is not lightning. It is not fire that Iroh can absorb and redirect the way waterbenders redirect force. It is an explosion that happens at the point of contact, and the point of contact is whatever the blast hits. Iroh's firebending allows him to generate walls of fire that stop conventional firebending attacks. Azula's blue fire is hotter and more intense than conventional fire, which is why her blast to his chest wounded him. Combustion Man's blast disintegrated large boulders and evaporated significant bodies of water without slowing. A wall of fire does not stop something that disintegrates matter on contact. The only reliable counter is hitting the tattoo before the blast fires, which requires accuracy across the engagement range where Combustion Man is most dangerous. Iroh is experienced enough to identify threats and tactical enough to look for structural weaknesses. He might find the counter. He might not find it before the third shot lands. Toph Beifong. She invented metal bending on the spot under duress, which established that her ceiling was not determined by what Earthbending had previously been documented as capable of. She cannot be lied to. She processes the world entirely through vibration felt through her feet and has been shown to identify opponents' positions and movements through terrain before they are aware she is tracking them. Against Iroh specifically, her advantage is that Earthbending and Firebending do not have a natural counter relationship. Iroh can deflect fire, redirect lightning, and generate enough output to overwhelm most opponents at range. He cannot unmake stone that is already surrounding him, or stop the ground beneath his feet from becoming the weapon, or prevent the terrain from being reshaped around him faster than Firebending can address it. The limitation is Iroh's intelligence. He is not only a firebender, he is the most experienced strategic mind in the series, and fighting Toph at close range on unfamiliar terrain while she controls every surface under both their feet requires an opponent who does not adapt. Iroh adapts. The White Lotus liberation of Ba Sing Se demonstrated that he could operate against multiple skilled opponents simultaneously while making real-time tactical adjustments, but Toph's Earthbending, operating on every surface simultaneously, creates problems that real-time tactical adjustment cannot fully solve. She is 12 years old and Iroh would hate fighting her. Katara. She is the greatest waterbender of her generation, a designation Iroh himself would respect rather than underestimate. Her power ceiling in the finale involved holding her own against Comet-enhanced Azula and ultimately defeating her through a combination of tactical intelligence and waterbending mastery that drew from every tradition she had absorbed across 3 seasons. Her healing ability, her ice manipulation, her capacity to pull water from moisture in the air in environments with no obvious water source, these combine into a combat profile that cannot be neutralized by simply removing the water supply. In direct engagement with Iroh, the power differential is real, and the experience differential is even larger. Iroh has decades of refined combat experience against opponents at the highest tier the Fire Nation produced. Katara's growth across the series was extraordinary by any measure, and her performance trajectory suggests she would eventually be the equal of anyone. At the point in the series where she fought Azula, she had not yet reached the specific ceiling Iroh occupies, but the bloodbending she can access on a full moon changes the terms of any engagement she participates in, and it changes them in a direction that Iroh's firebending cannot simply overpower. A waterbender who can use bloodbending is not operating within the same combat framework that firebending addresses. She is operating within the body itself. Zuko. The post-Sun Warriors version of Zuko is a different fighter from the one who spent 2 seasons chasing the Avatar on a fire ship. The Dragon's evaluation produced firebending rooted in vitality and the full spectrum of what the element actually was, the same source Iroh had been drawing from for decades, and the convergence of that source in both of them means they were working from the same philosophical foundation for the first time in the series. Iroh himself acknowledged that Zuko had surpassed him in certain respects after the transformation. Their sparring match at the Western Air Temple, documented in the comics, produced a result where Zuko emerged victorious, the student defeating the master after finally reaching the correct internal state for his power. The direct combat record across the series shows Iroh consistently reading Zuko, guiding him, and operating ahead of him tactically. The record after the Sun Warriors shows something different. Iroh at full commitment would bring everything decades of experience produces. Zuko, at full commitment, would bring the same philosophical source the experience was built on, plus the emotional resolution that Iroh had been trying to reach him toward for 3 seasons. The fight between them at their respective peaks is the series' most interesting hypothetical. It is also the one Iroh would least want to have. Azula. She already wounded him. In the ghost town of Tuzin, during the 3-way engagement between Aang's group, Zuko, and Azula's team, she fired a blue fire blast at Iroh's chest. He went down. She fled the moment the opening appeared, which means the engagement did not continue long enough to determine whether the wound was eventually fatal in the absence of treatment. That moment, Iroh on the ground, Azula escaping, is the only confirmed serious injury he sustained across the entire series from another bender, and it was her doing. Her technical ceiling is the most refined in the series at her peak. Blue fire runs hotter than anything any other human firebender produced. Lightning generation at 14 before the emotional collapse was smooth and precise enough that she used it as a combat tool rather than a desperation weapon. Iroh had developed the counter to lightning specifically because Azula's existence created a scenario where the counter was necessary. You do not invent lightning redirection unless you are planning for the day someone fires it at you. The fact that he invented it means he anticipated fighting her. The fact that she wounded him in Tuzin means she found the engagement window his preparation could not close. A direct confrontation between Peak Azula and Iroh at full commitment without the chaos of a multi-party fight creating openings for exploitation is the honest answer to where his ceiling sits relative to hers. She wounded him while managing multiple opponents across multiple engagement zones. What she could do focused is different from what she did distracted. Fire Lord Ozai. Iroh said it himself. When Zuko told him he was the only person other than the Avatar who could defeat Ozai, Iroh acknowledged the assessment and then quietly said he was not sure he could. That is the Dragon of the West, the man who shattered the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, who redirected lightning from Azula's assault, who dismantled an entire Fire Nation occupation force in a night, expressing doubt about one specific matchup. The doubt is not performance. The series had established by that point that Iroh did not perform doubt. He performed harmlessness, he performed eccentricity, he performed the rambling old man until the moment he needed not to. Doubt from Iroh was information. Ozai's raw output during the finale, Comet-enhanced, pursuing Aang across Wulong Forest, fire whips, sustained jet propulsion, lightning generation, charge blasts that broke apart stone structures, represented the top ceiling of what the element could produce at that moment in history. Without the comet, Ozai was described as the most powerful active firebender in the world. Iroh was the only person who might have matched him. Might. The word choice came from Iroh. He lived by precision, and he chose that word deliberately. The one person in the series the Dragon of the West might not be able to stop is the person who held the throne that should have been Iroh's, and spent decades being the reason Iroh's nephew nearly didn't survive to inherit a better one.